Good afternoon, GRRA. Welcome back to the third edition of Real Talk, the official podcast of the Greensboro Regional Realtors Association. Today we have a very special edition of Real Talk for Women's History Month, as today we have Sharon Dameron, Melissa Greer, Sandra O'Connor, Betty Smith, and Virginia Warren Hall, in addition to, of course, our president, Marvette Artis.
Good afternoon and welcome, ladies.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Well, since the earliest days of the real estate industry, women have been notably absent. In fact, when NAR itself was founded in 1908, its membership was 100% male, which meant until the mid-1960s, most real estate agents selling residential real estate were male. Over the next decade, increasing number of women entered the profession, and by 1980, female real estate agents outnumbered male real estate agents. So now, let's start with what motivated you to pursue a career in real estate? Melissa?
My mother made me do it. No, I was a child when she became a realtor, and my brothers and sisters, I'm the youngest of five, and four of us are realtors, and it was not many. I was a waitress, and she didn't think that was good enough, and I was a mediocre student. So she said, let's do this while you can still study, and I got my real estate. I always did what she told me to do.
Okay.
I mean, sort of.
Sort of, okay. Sharon?
Mine was actually by accident. I had 3 dachshunds, and they yapped so much that my husband and I got evicted from a townhouse, and we said, we'll just buy a house. And the realtor that was working with us asked my husband, not me, what about an exciting and rewarding career in real estate? Would you like to try it? He said, I wouldn't, but my wife might. So I thought, well, I'll take the exam and try it till I can find a real job. That was 48 years ago.
48 years ago. Betty?
Well, I'm just up on Sharon a little bit. I'm starting my 49th year.
Ooh.
And just a tidbit of history, Helen Wood she is the first woman to own a real estate company in the 1960s. I found that out the other day. I was playing tennis with her daughter. Oh my gosh.
Wow.
But anyway, I took my real estate course in Columbus, North Carolina. Down in the eastern part of the state, my husband was teaching and coaching down there, and I was home every day, all day, without a car while he was out teaching and coaching. And so I got to where I couldn't communicate with people. So I decided I'd take a course at the community college. And so I took the real estate course at my dad's coaching, and the teacher had a license from Nevada, not even a license in the North Carolina, and I learned very little, but I worked and studied with the book and took the test, and then some friends of ours had a real estate company, and they just wanted me to show real estate on the lake. It was Lake Waccamaw. So they gave me a boat, ski lines, and a bathing suit allowance. And that's how I started out in real estate in 1975.
Virginia?
Well, I started out, it was by accident also. I was a flight attendant and I moved home, and I wanted to buy a home for myself. I was single at the time. And being an African American, I wanted to educate myself to understand the lingo of the real estate business, and also not to be taken advantage of. Because during that time, because I bought my first home in the 70s, and of course you had redlining, you had all of that type of thing, and I wanted to live where I wanted to live. So I took some real estate courses, and I really enjoyed the real estate. I said, this is really interesting. And so I took even more courses. And I did buy my home, and I had educated myself so that I could understand what they were telling me and not telling me lies, but I knew when I was being taken advantage of and not. And that's why I ended up getting my real estate license, and it's been a pleasure.
And how long did you say you've been?
34 years.
34 years. Nice. Sandra?
Wow. Well, I got a license for a rainy day. I was a law librarian and had what would call now a call-in center for attorneys that needed legal research because everybody didn't have a computer on their desk. And some friends found out I had a license and they'd say, show me this, show me that, till it snowballed. And I found out I liked that a heck of a lot more than sitting in a dark corner somewhere doing research on computers. So I asked my investor friends what company they respected that I could go work for so I could learn how to do this. And they said, you don't need to do that. Hang your shingle. We'll teach you everything you need to know. Mind you, they didn't have a license. I did what they advised, and with a lot of grace and a lot of dumb questions to some very good friends, I managed to survive. Of course, today you couldn't just go hang your shingle, but then you could.
Melissa, could you highlight one pivotal moment in the early stages of your career that helped shape your success for over the past 30 years?
Absolutely. So when I had been in real estate about 6 months, I always say you didn't have to be a grown-up when I started, but I was old enough to do it, but very young. I didn't sell anything. Like, I just came to my mother's office, and I had the worst attitude. It was terrible. Like, I can't even believe I think of myself back then. I think, I wouldn't want to be around me. And one day, my mother said, we were in the Forum 6. Does anybody remember Forum 6? So we were up on the 5th floor, and my mother called me out. I thought she was going to push me out, but she didn't. But I said, she said, I want to talk to you about something. You're not happy doing this, are you? I said, no. She said, you have the worst attitude. You come in here every day, and if you're just not happy, it's not working for you. I thought she was going to fire me, but I mean, I kind of wanted her to. But she said, I'll tell you what, I got a deal for you. I want you to do everything I tell you right now. She said, come in here for 30 days, every day. She gave me this mirror, which hangs above my desk now. And she said, when you're on the phone, smile, people will hear it. And she said, do open houses, take your phone duty. Y'all remember what that was. And she said, if you don't do better in 30 days, I will help you find another job. And I'll be honest with you, it was the turning point of my whole life. So it really did. I just went from there. And in 30 days, I sold enough to get a Honda Accord, with a moonroof. I always say with a moonroof. Okay. But yeah, so no, it was really, I look back on that and I feel so fortunate.
Sharon, what was that pivotal moment for you?
When I first got in real estate, there was no training, just like Sandra was saying. So, I thought, I'm just going to go out and get some for sale by owners. And I called them on the phone. They slammed the phone, So I remember going to a meeting that I think the Board of Realtors had at the King Cotton Hotel. I don't know if y'all remember going to it. And it was a national speaker, and he talked about farming. And he said, none of you will probably ever do this. There's over 100 of us in the room. He said, but it's a great way to be a listing agent. Well, I had nothing better to do, so I was just like, okay. So I farmed my neighborhood. The houses ranged from 25 to 30,000. There were, I think, 300 houses, so I delivered pot holders, I delivered pumpkins at Christmas, all these things. And within a few years, I was known as the mayor of Westbury. So then everybody thought I was a listing expert, and it just exploded from there.
So Betty, can you share one pivotal moment in the early stages of your new construction career that changed how you do business?
I was with a pretty large company called Richardson Corporation, and it had a residential resale division and a new homes division. When I went to Richardson, I went there to change and manage their residential division, and then they asked me to get involved and start up a new home sales division. And then shortly after that, they made me a vice president because they didn't have any women that were vice presidents. And so I sat in a lot of meetings about what they were going to do, land they were going to purchase, things they were going to do. And I did the land transaction while I was there for Adams Farm, which is still on the books as the largest land transaction at one time. So I sat in that room, and we had a company from Raleigh that was going to be working with Richardson East West Corporation. And so I sat in that room and tried to explain to them how Greensboro was not Raleigh and that we needed to do things differently. And they didn't listen to me. I didn't argue with them. I didn't stand my ground. I didn't speak up. But you got to own what you know. And I knew that it wasn't going to work here. As things progressed, I eventually left that company. And there was an article in the paper that I can quote today. The senior vice president said, "We really appreciate everything that Betty tried to do."
Tried to do.
Yeah. And so right then and there, I decided, okay, guys, I'm coming at you. And I have been gung-ho. I mean, I really have. And I still am. I have such a passion for development and new construction. But that was a pivotal moment for me.
And it shows. Virginia, can you share one memorable challenge or obstacle you faced in commercial real estate, and how did the outcome shape your career?
Thank you for that question, because I did want that question. I was working with a company also at the time, because during that time you had to be under a company for 2 years before you could become your own broker or have your own business.
Realtor Associates.
I was with a company, and I did get a commercial prospect, and he called me, and I talked with him, and I took him out to see a site. And it was like a $2 million site. And it was a trucking company. And they were interested in it. Somehow, in some way, at the time, because I was a flight attendant, I had someone else within the company, basically the head person, to talk with the person while I was gone. And it ended up that when I would call the prospect to talk about what he had seen, where I had taken him, and the company was interested, they would not return my calls. They would not talk to me. And then between 6 months to a year later, that company was in the spot that I had taken them to. And that told me I needed to be my own person, have my own company, and work and do what I needed to do for my company, because the person came back to me and said, "You're all dressed up with nowhere to go." So that just told me at that time that I had to do what I had to do. So I educated myself. I have several designations behind me because I am high on education, and that has pivoted me forward in the business of real estate and commercial.
Sandra, as a woman leader, can you share one memorable challenge or obstacle you faced in the real estate industry, and how did the outcome shape your career?
Well, that's interesting. I had an investor client, one of the ones that encouraged me to hang my own shingle, wrote an offer for that investor, who of course always made lowball offers because that's what investors are inclined to do. They're not passionate about them, they're just by the numbers. And I took it to what I could best describe as an old codger. And I took my offer and I presented it to him at his office, at his desk, and he looked at my offer. He took a pencil and threw it across the desk at me and told me he was not going to present that offer. I said, "You have an obligation. I've been to orientation. I'm going to sit here until you present that offer." And I learned a whole lot then. So he did present the offer, and of course it was denied, and time went on, we went on. About 2 months later, that same agent called me up and said, "You know, our other deal didn't work out. We will now entertain your offer." So I went back to my investor who taught me the lesson. Investor said, "Fine, we'll make another offer. It will be lower." And I learned a whole lot about negotiation, about working with people, about using your strength, but knowing when to fold and when to keep going. And I think that was a turning point for me as well.
Now, Melissa, you have been a top producing real estate agent with Berkshire Hathaway for how long?
I've been with the same company since 1990, but it wasn't always Berkshire Hathaway, but Berkshire Hathaway probably about 10 years ago, I think.
What do you consider the most challenging aspect of being a top producer in residential real estate, particularly as a woman in this industry?
I think that women and men are looked at differently, especially when we need to be strong and advocate for our client. And sometimes, when women have to be strong and advocate for a client, we're looked at negatively. I think when men do it, that it's a something to be proud of. I think what Sandra just said is so pivotal. You have to know when to fold them. You have to know when to soften your approach, and because a lot of times men don't appreciate it. So, and I feel like what we have to do is learn how to do what's best for our clients.
Sharon, you were among the few women who held the position of president of the Greensboro Regional Realtors Association, especially in the early years. What year were you president?
I was president in 1986.
What prompted that decision, and how did it impact your real estate career?
I won't say you make a decision to be president. I actually, to back up a little bit, I thought I was going to be a school teacher all my life. Saved weekly readers. I don't know if y'all remember that in grammar school. Anyway, when I did student teaching, I couldn't get out of the door fast enough. I realized I needed to be out and about and doing things. So then when I joined the Board of Realtors in 76, I joined the Education Committee. Then I joined the State Education Committee in 1980, and I started traveling across the state, traveling college. I don't know if y'all remember that.
I remember it.
So I became well known in the Board of Realtors and was nominated for a directorship. Well, I won, and I was the only woman there. And the men on that Board of Directors, we had Charlie Scott. He didn't even speak to me, I don't think, the first year. Alec Wren was there, Alvin Butler, Tony Montana. The only guy that was nice to me was Sam Hooker. I don't know if y'all ever heard of him.
Oh, yeah.
But he saved me a seat. So anyway, it was tough kind of breaking into that spot at the table, if you will. And the first year I was pretty much silent. They wouldn't listen anyway, so I was just kind of quiet. But I kind of eased into it. And by this third year, Alvin Butler and Alec Wren approached me about being president. And I was like, why in the world would you want to spend all that time doing that? That's a lot of work and very little appreciation, I guess. And I was single, and I was like, I don't know about that. But they convinced me to do it. In terms of how it impacted my career, I had such friendships across the state, even beyond that, and could reach out and call anybody about any question or how would you handle this. Just the camaraderie and the friendship. It wasn't a job. It was going to hang out with your friends, commiserate over aggravating things or celebrating successes. So it was really a nice thing.
And you and Tony were responsible for us being in this building.
That's right. Mm-hmm. Tony Montana, who just about ran over me the first time I delivered an offer to him and said, get out of my way. We became great friends. And yes, in 1991, we cut the ribbon for this building.
Betty, you too were one of among a few women who held the position of president at the Greensboro Regional Realtors Association. Again, what prompted that decision, and how did it impact your real estate career?
I came in just as we were just suffering through a terrible downturn. And because of that, and because a lot of people lost money, that was a very difficult year in 2009. Mm-hmm. I actually ran twice. I was defeated once by Trip Brown, who's an incredible man. Then I got talked into running again. But I really ran because I'm a true believer that you give back. You give back to the community. You give back to the organization that had given me so much. And I've grown tremendously through this organization, the Builders Association and TREBIC, another association. And so I've held the leadership spot in all three of those. And so I just did it because I felt it was my turn to give back. And I learned so much. Mike and I had so much fun. We went to these different meetings, and he helped me to get the most that I could out of them. And I still go back to a lot of things that we did then. So I grew in that year, but I also had to deal with a lot of adversity from the public. We had quite a few complaints because people were losing money, and they had bought houses earlier, and now they were having to sell them for less than what they bought, and they thought their realtor was responsible. And then, just those kind of things. So it took an enormous amount of my time. And I gave up going to the gym. This is one thing that wasn't good. And I've never been back to the gym. But now I play tennis all the time.
That's right.
But it's a give and take. And we all have all received a lot from the association, and we all should give back, and that was my way of doing that.
Virginia, how has the commercial real estate industry evolved, in your opinion, over the past 3 decades, particularly in terms of opportunities for women?
That's a good question. I still think it's a little behind as far as where women are concerned. Women are in the commercial aspect of real estate, but people look to men. Sometimes we're not seen, and sometimes we're not heard. And that can be problematic when you are trying to break into that particular area of real estate. But I will say that I have become very much involved, and I have done several commercial properties where I did not have any problems in getting what I needed, because when you know, you know.
Sandra, you too were among the few women who held the position of president of the Greensboro Regional Realtors Association. What prompted that decision, and how did it impact your real estate career?
It's interesting because I've recently had a conversation about this, but I have my own little firm, and I belong to an independent network of firms. And a few people came to me and asked me to run for the board of directors, which I did. And then one day, Thelma Gilmer came to me and said, "We're putting your name in. Will you do it?" And I thought about it for a while, and I said yes. And initially, I was so foolhardy, I ran against Mark Yost, and for some reason, I lost. And I really believed I could beat him. And so then a couple years rolled around, and they came to me again, and I ran and I won. And I had that support. And the reason why we talked about that recently is I happened to be on the City Zoning Commission, and Paul Gilmer was recently appointed. And I welcomed Paul. He'd been on the commission before. I welcomed him back, and I told him the story of Thelma. He said, "Oh, yeah, she was just talking about that the other night."
Wow.
So people pave paths for you, and you have to always acknowledge those.
Melissa, you can tell a lot about a person by the books, newspapers, and or publications they read. If I'm in your office, what reading materials would I see?
I thought you were going to ask about when I was president of the Board of Realtors.
Well,
now I'm thrown off because I was already prepared to answer that one. No, that's a great question. I was actually in English. My degree's in English education. Of course, I never have time to read. So I am starting to read again. I have MLS sheets in my office. I've got my notes. I write files. But I mean, I have all these great magazines that I should read but don't. At home, I have more to read. I do like a book that's inspiring if it's short, because I don't know about y'all, but I've developed a little ADHD doing this, and it's hard for me to get into some self-help book that lasts forever. But if it's a short, like a fable, I can do that.
Sharon?
Melissa and I were talking about, we hoped you didn't ask this question. But
I just kind of pushed
I can
through
add
it.
to her MLS sheets. I love the Triad Journal. If you saw some of the books I enjoy reading, you would think I'm trying to be a serial killer because I like just zoning out reading Lee Childs or something like that. So I think to me, sometimes reading is just a way to get away from the stress and everything else. it isn't a book, but Howard Brenton was a trainer back in the day, and I bought his Superstar cassette tapes. You got one a month of a Superstar, and I would listen to that as I was driving around to appointments, and I got a lot of great ideas from Howard.
Do you still have a cassette player in your car? Just curious.
I do have one at home, Melissa. If you want to borrow one.
I was just curious.
Betty, what would I see in your office?
Well, I have a very small desk in a very small area because when I come to my office, I am focused. The agents say, don't try to talk to Betty when she's working because I am focused. I'm in there to work. I'm going to do what I got to do. But I have a book. Well, of course, my favorite book is the Bible, but I have another book that Elaine Ernest gave me, and it's called The Color of Water. Mm-hmm. And I would recommend it to anyone. It's a great book. I love to read, but unfortunately I don't have the time to read all that I'd like to. But there'll be a day that I'll have time, and then I'll get around to it.
Then you'll get around to it. Virginia, what would I see in your office?
Well, I have a very small office, and it's a home office, so it would be my home. And as you can see, I have lots of books on my phone because I do audibles.
I do Audible. I like that.
And like you, the number one book is the Bible. But there's one book I would recommend for everyone, and it's called Cast, and it's by Isabel Wickerson, Caste. It's on Oprah's list. It will take you through.
Sandra, what would I see in your office?
Well, most of what I read is digital, and I'm going to keep up with national news. I'm going to read industry stuff. I'm going to read local stuff. I love politics. I'm a news junkie. If you were going to look at books, they're spare, but most of the books I have are on leadership because I think that's the most significant part of what we do. As a fundamental guide for everything in my life, my go-to book always is Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. And I reread that periodically because it just gives me a basis for everything that I do.
Melissa, what advice would you give to an aspiring realtor, female or male, who aspires to achieve long-term success as a top producer in residential sales?
I mean, thank you for that easy question. I would say the most important thing is play well with others, your colleagues, your peers, other realtors, your plumber, your electrician. Show everyone respect. It builds, I'm a relationship person, and it's just invaluable in your career if you really treat people right, because they'll want to help you out, they'll want to work with you. And I think that's the one thing is you just play well with others like you did when you were little, but it's more important.
Sharon, what advice would you give?
That's well said. I think in this business, there's not the glass ceiling there is in a lot of other industries, and I think the sky's the limit. Don't put blinders on. Just pursue your goals and go for it.
Betty, what advice would you give to an aspiring realtor, female or male, who wants to succeed in the new construction market?
Well, first and foremost, you've got a whole area to really learn a lot about. You can't go out and show a home and say, that board, you got to know what that board is, and you need to understand construction. So it's really important that you understand development, that you understand the ordinances and codes that we have to live by in that industry. And then you've got to know all about who are the buyers, understand how to do that, and we do that through a lot of research. And one of the things you got to remember about research is you're always looking in the rearview mirror with research. So you've got to also be able to apply that as you move forward. And you will make mistakes, but don't beat yourself up and don't quit because of that. I always gave myself a rule. I can make 15% mistakes and 85% rights. But to be able to do that, I've got to be very well educated in that arena. Because you got to talk the talk. I mean, I go out there and talk to the subs. I got to know something about what they're doing. It's an incredible industry, and it is so much fun. And it's putting a big old puzzle together, but it's not always easy.
Virginia, what advice would you give an aspiring realtor, male or female, who wants to succeed in the commercial market?
Number one is education. You really have to educate yourself on what you're talking about. And be honest, because honesty just carries itself. But when you lie and when you try to deceive to get something, it takes a lot away from the industry and from others that come behind you.
Sandra?
Well, I think that we've just gotten a lot of really great advice right now to be kind to others, to play well with others, to be educated, to know our product and our industry. But for me, my biggest lesson would be to get out of your own way. I think that we set too many limits on ourselves and we set too many boundaries. And that's one thing, Marvette, I always admire about you, because you're always outside the box. And you see the possibilities. And I think that that's what we have to do. We have to remove the limits. And there is nothing we cannot do if we just decide that we're going to do it.
Thank you, Sandra. Here's the bonus question. If you knew then what you know now, what would you have done differently, Melissa?
The one thing I would do differently is your career is going to go up and down. And if you're in real estate, it's not in your control. When it's down, enjoy your life. Don't worry about it being down because it comes right back up. And I mean, I can think of times in my life where I thought, oh gosh, even recently, I'll never sell another house. I'm always worried about it. But the truth is it always comes up. If you're in it long enough, you see that. And so you end up sacrificing a lot for this career that you don't necessarily have to. So I wish that during the downtimes, of course, I might not have enough money, but during the downtimes, I wish I had traveled and done things where I really, instead of just worry about how I could sell another house.
Sharon?
I agree. I've always likened it to a roller coaster ride because you go up and you go down real fast and then you climb back up. And so I wish I had learned sooner how to plan my career as a business instead of just every time I got a commission check, oh, goody, and not saving enough for taxes, not forming a subchapter S or an LLC early enough. So I wasted taxes as an individual. So I think learning how to plan as a business would have been a lot more helpful than trial and error, where I paid for a lot of things and it was a complete bust, So it's just one of those things. But overall, I wouldn't change. You learned. So, and you keep going forward.
Betty, if you knew then what you know now, what would you have done differently?
I would not have beat myself up so much. I would have given myself credit for what I knew and what I did. I just tried to be happy because I was extremely fortunate. I had a lot of doors open for me. I did a lot of different things in this industry. I've had a great run and hope it goes on for a little longer. When you get my age, people ask you daily, when are you going to retire? And so this is my new answer. I'll probably die at my desk or in a house, and I want you to be happy for me if that happens, But seriously, I just think you just have to enjoy the ride. Don't beat yourself up.
Virginia?
I would not do anything differently. I've had a good run. Being a flight attendant, I've been to many countries. I've seen many different cultures. And in doing so, it has broadened my horizon as to where I am and where I'm going. Because a lot of times when you're in one place, you think that is the only place. But it's not. Because it's so vast. So you cannot be so small-minded that you can't get through anything. And that everything is a problem. When it's not. It's just life. I am doing it my way. So I'm happy with that.
Sandra?
Probably the one thing I would do differently is I would have bought my fax machine sooner. I remember when I had my tiny firm, and a group came to me and they said, we have to have a fax machine. And I thought, oh my God, those signatures can't be legal. That just can't be the right way to do things. And I found out certainly that it was. And that would have taught me to be on the edge of technology a little sooner. Because I really do go with that. If you're not on the edge, you're taking up too much room.
Well, ladies, I must say this is one of my favorite podcasts. Now, this is just my third.
We'll take it.
But this is one of my favorite podcasts, and I'm sure we'll get a lot of feedback because this has been incredible to be in the room with 5 superstars. You 5 are amazing, absolutely amazing. Is there anything that you would like to say as we close?
I feel a little intimidated being with these ladies, honestly. Sharon thought I was too young. I just want to put that on the record.
Now that's Melissa.
I remember when she was that child.
That's Melissa Greer talking, and she says,
I'm telling you, these are my people I looked up to my whole career. I mean, I didn't realize how young I was when I did it. But, I mean, seriously, the only committee I've ever been on with the Board of Realtors, Sharon got me on it in the 80s.
I wanted her to get involved.
I know. Well, now you can still get me involved. Next time I'm on the podcast, I want you to ask me about my presidency.
I'll remember that. But I think you need to run and win.
I do think that, I would say I'm very honored to be in this group. So thank you, Marvette.
Well, let me say to Melissa, we all loved your mom.
Well,
and
that means a
she
lot.
was someone that I used to talk to a lot, and I will always love her, and so we'll always take care of you. And
Well,
Braden.
I appreciate it. We sometimes I'll say something and think, where did that come from? That was smart, and I always think she's sitting on my shoulder. So I appreciate that. She is very much a pivotal part of my life. So
She had
thank
the
you.
velvet hammer.
Definitely.
Well, I would
Thank
like
you.
you all to know that I look up to each and every one of you. So thank you for everything that you've done in your career. Thank you for how you inspire others, and continue to inspire others. And with that,
Thank each and every one of you for joining us today for Real Talk. Just like Marvette said, we really appreciate you all sharing your knowledge, and we're thankful that y'all set aside time today. Folks, you can tune into this podcast by visiting our YouTube channel. We will share it on our social media channels as well. And thank you, everyone. Have a great day, and happy Women's History Month.
thank you.